Chapter 5. The John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007 was signed into law by President George W. Bush on October 19, 2006. This law stripped the governor's control of their National Guard units and gave the president sweeping powers over those units in times of public emergency. Rolling thunder. That's what bikers called it, and Jimmy understood why. The sound was deafening, growing louder with each passing second. The approaching motorcycles had caught his ears minutes ago, and the roar was threatening to fall upon them like an avalanche. Bill, Cindy, and Julie had rejoined him back at the truck. Jimmy's mind raced as he imagined 1,000 different scenarios, none of which was good. "There's no power in there," said Julie. "There doesn't seem to be power anywhere." "That was creepy," said Cindy, raising her voice as the motorcycles grew near. "Wow, is that ever loud? Don't those guys believe in mufflers?" "Julie, take Cindy over that hill and stay down," Jimmy shouted, pointing to a nearby mound that rose just high enough to keep them out of view of the parking lot. "Why?" asked Julie. "Because you hear a few motorcycles?" "Jimmy, quit acting so paranoid." "Just do it, please! There isn't much time!" Jimmy screamed, feeling that a little paranoia might not be such a bad thing. Not now, anyhow. They were seconds away, and Jimmy could hear the throttles cutting back as the group slowed to enter the rest stop, the rapping of their exhaust pipes echoing their harbinger's call. A minivan that had been parked in the rest area roared past, followed by a pickup truck, leaving their groups alone. "Fine!" hollered Julie. "Come on, Cindy, follow me." Relieved, Jimmy watched them jog towards the hill and disappear from sight. "Maybe I should go with them!" Bill shouted to Jimmy, his face pale in the twilight. "Don't worry, it's probably nothing," Jimmy shouted back. "Just be cool. Everything should be fine." "Be cool. Right, okay, I can be cool." The first of the motorcycles rumbled their way into the parking area. There were 20-some in all, the leather-clad bikers riding two abreast with absolute precision. Following them was a new-looking school bus. Whatever district it hailed from had been crudely spray-painted over. They parked about 50 yards away, one by one revving their engines vigorously before they shut them off. The door to the school bus opened, and a barrel-chested man emerged carrying a battered cooler. He had huge tattooed arms and a long greasy beard. Just like their motorcycles, the men were loud. They got off their bikes, hooting and hollering, and eagerly took beers from the cooler. They talked among themselves and laughed boisterously. Women emerged from the bus. Some were young and looked to be in their mid-teens. They looked as hard-boiled as their men, and they walked with an air of confidence, many holding six-packs and burning cigarettes. And here came Ken and Patty's group from the bathroom. Ken led the way, looking straight ahead and holding Patty's hand. The others followed, ushering children past the motley crew, skirting them as much as possible. Crude comments were made, followed by howling laughter. The families continued on their way, pretending not to hear. Jimmy felt his heart in his throat, and he'd broken out in a cold sweat. A slight breeze rattled the leaves in the trees overhead, and the sound of a million crickets filled the air. The bikers had grown silent, watching in amusement as the group rushed to their cars. To Jimmy, they looked like lions stalking their prey. Then, as if reading his mind, a tall biker pointed directly at Jimmy and Bill. There was some low conversation, followed by some nodding of heads. All eyes were now on them. Jimmy's mouth felt dry as sand. "Oh, shit!" said Bill. "Get in the truck," Jimmy said from the side of his mouth. "And get your gun out. Nice and easy, Bill, okay?" "What about Julie and Cindy?" "We're not leaving them. Just get in the truck. Trust me, okay?" A motorcycle engine roared to life, followed by another. The pair raced towards the Mac. One stopped directly in front of the truck, the other behind. Jimmy's hand shook as he fired up the engine. Jimmy watched a tall biker with wild hair dismount his bike. He looked at Jimmy and Bill and smiled. He was older than Jimmy had guessed. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and deep lines were etched at the corners of his red-rimmed eyes. A quick check in Bill's door-mounted mirror revealed a younger biker who was short and stocky and wore a red bandana on his head. He was making his way alongside the truck, his face covered in a week's growth of razor stubble. It was a replay of what had happened earlier, except this time, there was no farmer there to save them. They were also in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nothing but miles of tamarack swamp and birch trees. "Hey!" said the tall biker, leering up to Jimmy. "Leaving so soon? Why? Party's just getting started! Why don't you shut down your rig and join us?" "No thanks," said Jimmy. "We gotta get moving." "Maybe I wasn't asking," growled the tall man, pulling open Jimmy's door with a considerable force. "Shut the damn thing off, now! What you got in the back, asshole? Anything I might be interested in?" "Get out!" ordered the short biker from the other side of the truck. Jimmy turned the key and killed the engine. He stole a glance at Bill, and he could see that he hadn't pulled his gun. Jimmy was happy he hadn't because the short biker had pulled one of his own. He held it trained on Bill. From the look on his face, Jimmy thought he wouldn't hesitate to use it. Bill was slowly climbing down, and Jimmy did the same. "We don't want any trouble, do we, Jimmy?" asked Bill. "Shut your goddamn mouth," ordered the biker with the gun. "Okay," said Bill. "I'll be quiet. I can do that." The short biker scowled. He held up the gun to Bill's nose and gave him a hard look. A car drove by, followed by another. Jimmy recognized the vehicles as those belonging to his caravan. It was obvious that the biker's interest lay in the truck and whatever cargo Jimmy had on board. Jimmy was thankful that the others were leaving. Inside many of the cars were women and children. More cars rolled past, and Jimmy could see that was exactly what the bikers wanted. Some were now shouting at the stragglers, even kicking the fenders and doors to get the drivers moving. The last vehicle to leave was Ken and Patty in their new Chevy Tahoe, which now sported a nasty dent in the door and rear quarter panel. Ken slowed the truck as it approached the Mac. "Let them get in with us," Ken pleaded to the tall man. "Take the truck, just let them go." "And who's going to drive the damn truck?" taunted the tall biker. "Get the hell out of here." "Wait, Lonnie," shouted the short biker from the back of the truck. "They can take this piece of shit with them," he said, referring to Bill. Jimmy turned. Bill was being ushered towards the Tahoe by the hydrant-shaped biker. He pushed Bill in the back, lashing out with a battered boot when Bill didn't move fast enough. The tall biker called Lonnie laughed, giving Bill a vicious kick as he stumbled towards Ken's idling vehicle. Jimmy caught Bill just before he fell. "It'll be okay, man," Jimmy said. "Just go." "What about, asked Bill, looking absolutely terrified. "Just go," repeated Jimmy between gritted teeth. "You heard the man," said the short biker, holding the gun to his head. "You got 3 seconds before I blow your head off." Bill lunged for the back door of the Tahoe and clambered inside. Ken glared at the bikers with hatred and loathing. "Move it," ordered Lonnie. "My friend here doesn't have much patience." Ken dropped the Tahoe into gear, and the truck lurched forward. Jimmy swallowed hard as it did so. He was frightened, not only for himself, but for Julie and Cindy. He prayed that they wouldn't give themselves away. "Now, asswipe, let's see what you got in the back," said Lonnie with a satisfied sneer. "Open it!" Jimmy fumbled in his pocket for the key to the padlock, feeling the gun pressed to his back by the shorter man. "No funny business," the biker hissed in his ear. Jimmy shook his head. He could see the crowd back at the bikers had begun walking towards them to watch the show. The approaching boots clapped across the asphalt. Jimmy fished out the key and inserted it into the lock. Snapping it open, he flipped open the latch and lifted up the door, the rollers clacking in the door tracks. The sun had disappeared from sight, but there was still plenty of light to see that the bikers had made quite a haul. A few whistled as they gathered at the back of the truck. The cargo area of the Mac was packed with groceries, camping gear, and tools of all shapes and sizes. 9 cans of gas were strapped to the driver's side wall. A canoe rode on top of the pile, perched on top of duffel bags and tied safely at both ends to the opposite wall. "What do you think, Grease?" asked Lonnie to the big barrel-chested man, who looked to be the leader of the gang. "Nice work," he said in a baritone voice. "We can use all that shit." "Good score," said a voice from behind Jimmy. "Right on, man," replied another. Jimmy stood with his head down, feeling as if he had failed his group. He pondered his situation, hoping the group would want to get moving soon. He was sure that Ken and the others hadn't gone far. They'd wait until the bikers had left and return to pick up Julie and Cindy. He'd slip away somehow and walk to Ken's if he had to, provided the bikers didn't kill him first. He lit up a smoke and took a deep drag on the Camel. Grease was rummaging in the back of the truck, holding up little trophies here and there, much to the delight of his subjects. Jimmy felt the anger growing in his gut as the big man closed the door and snapped the latch shut. "What the hell do we need him for?" he asked, gesturing to Jimmy. "I ain't driving that damn truck. What about my bike?" asked Lonnie.
"Shit,"
a raspy-voiced woman said, drawling the word out contemptuously.
"I can drive it. I can drive anything. We sure as hell don't need him."
"No," said Grease. "No, we don't," his bushy beard hiding the lower half of his face. "We all know you can handle a truck, Wanda. Makes me wonder why Lonnie decided to keep this boy around. What's up, man? Are you sweet on this punk?" That remark brought on enormous guffs from the biker gang. Jimmy's face felt as if it would catch fire. His hands clenched into fists at his side, and he had to fight to remain calm. He stole a glance at Lonnie and could see that the comment had struck a nerve with him as well. "Real funny, Grease," he said as the laughter died away. "Well, what'd you keep him for?" asked Grease, crossing his beefy arms, which were covered with fading tattoo ink, spreading like a fungus from his upper shoulder to the bottom of his wrist. "I didn't ask you to do that. Wanda's driving the truck. I can't think of a single reason you'd want to keep him around, unless you got eyes for him. He is a looker, ain't he, girls?" There was more laughter, and Wanda approached Jimmy and held her chubby hand on his cheek.
"It sure is,"
she agreed.
"I'll take him when you're done with him, Lonnie. He looks fun."
"Eat shit," said Lonnie, baring his teeth. The group howled with laughter as if this were the funniest thing Lonnie had ever said. Grease held up his hands and spat, wiping his beard with a dirty hand. "Maybe I'm wrong, though," he said. "Maybe you got other ideas. You ain't made your bones with the club yet. Maybe you kept this little runaround so you could take care of that unfinished business. How about it, Lonnie? Is that what you were thinking? Some of the boys here were wondering about you. They're wondering if you're a cop. To tell you the truth, I wondered it myself. I ain't no cop." "Well, prove it," spat Grease. "That is, if you're man enough."
"Right on, Lonnie!"
shouted a voice from the back of the crowd.
"Tear him up, man!"
another voice said.
"Kill the little shit!"
"That must have been what you were thinking, huh, Lonnie?" asked Grease, his eyes as cold as ice. "You're the only one riding that hasn't got a patch. You know you've got to make your bones before I can patch you as a devil. Here's your chance, dude. Prove you ain't no cop." Jimmy tried backing up, but there was nowhere to go. He was surrounded by a sea of black leather, so close he could smell it. The group had suddenly gone silent. All eyes were now on Lonnie. "Well, what are you waiting for? You chicken shit? Or maybe you are sweet on him," taunted Grease. Jimmy felt strong hands grab him by the biceps. He looked hard at Lonnie, and that one look told him all he needed to know. Lonnie was going to kill him. He'd seen that look many times across the ring, and there was no mistaking it. The difference was that this time his attacker wasn't wearing boxing gloves. "Give me your gun, Chuck," said Lonnie. "I'll show you who's chicken." "Oh no," grunted Grease. "Not so fast. I want you to do it with a blade. That way, it's personal. Any asshole can fire a gun," he said with a chuckle. "No, Lonnie, I want you to cut his throat. I want you to look in his eyes when you do it. Brother, I want you to remember it. This is a big moment for you." Jimmy felt as if his heart would explode. Instinctively, he began to pull at the hands that held his arms. They held him like iron as he flailed in their grasp, kicking out with his legs but connecting with nothing but air. He watched Lonnie, hands digging into his jacket pocket and coming out with a large folding knife. Lonnie's hands were shaking, not much, but enough for Jimmy to notice. He opened it and hefted it into his right hand.
"Do it!"
urged a voice from behind Jimmy.
"Come on, Lonnie, stick 'em! Stick 'em like a pig! Let's see some blood!"
said another voice. Jimmy was suddenly grabbed by someone from behind. Whoever it was wrapped a huge arm around Jimmy's forehead, pulling it back and stretching his neck. Grease and Lonnie stood before him, while most of the others had gathered into a semicircle trying to get a good view of the killing. Grease stood with his arms crossed over his fat belly as if he were going to judge Lonnie on technique. His dark eyes were full of amusement. He looked at Jimmy without pity. This was nothing but a game to him. Jimmy stared into Lonnie's face in the fading light and saw nothing but cold determination. Lonnie reached out with his knife as if deciding which way to cut. Jimmy strained at his captors, finding their hold had only grown stronger. He was going to die. He was sure of it. Lonnie raised the knife. Crickets chirped in the distance. "Sorry, man," he said as he lifted the knife.